Hey, what's up, amazing people? It's your girl here, and I'm about to drop a story that'll have your jaw on the floor. Seriously, grab some popcorn, because this is wild. Before we dive into this epic tale of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate triumph, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and ring that notification bell so you never miss out on mind-blowing content like this. Your support means the world and helps me bring you more incredible stories. And hey, once you've heard this, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I read every single one. All right, are you ready? Let's get into it. He brought his lover to our anniversary dinner and told me she was the upgrade. What he didn't know was that she would never see him again after that night. Meet the upgrade, Blake said with a smirk, his hand possessively resting on the small of her back. Those 3 words hung in the air of the Gilded Lily, shattering the carefully set anniversary dinner I'd spent months planning. 10 years of marriage reduced to a cruel introduction on what should have been our special night. Blake, who was just turning 45 this year, had no idea what was coming. I watched them settle into their seats across from me. Chloe's perfect blonde hair caught the candlelight as she slid into what should have been my husband's chair. Blake sat beside her, already reaching for the 1982 Bordeaux I'd ordered, our traditional anniversary wine. His casual confidence was breathtaking. He truly believed he was in control of this situation, if only he knew. What Blake didn't realize as he poured 3 glasses of wine was that the 3rd glass wasn't for an awkward truce. It was for a toast. To new beginnings, I said, lifting my wine glass with a steady hand. The irony of my toast was lost on them both. Blake smiled, clearly pleased with how maturely I was handling the situation. He'd always underestimated me, assumed that my quiet strength was weakness, my patience was passivity. The next few hours would change everything. Each second that ticked by brought us closer to the moment when their perfect little world would implode. The evidence was already in place. The pieces had been moving for months. While they'd been enjoying their secret rendezvous and plotting their grand reveal, I'd been orchestrating something far more intricate. I excused myself to the powder room, maintaining my composure as I felt their eyes on my back. The burgundy dress I wore, Blake's favorite, suddenly felt like armor. In the elegant bathroom mirror, I checked my reflection. Not a hair out of place, not a smudge in my carefully applied makeup. The woman staring back at me looked polished, controlled, and dangerous. Tonight wasn't just the end of my marriage, it was the beginning of something else entirely. Chloe would indeed never see Blake again after this evening, but not for the reasons anyone might suspect. As I returned to the table, I allowed myself a small smile. Sometimes the perfect revenge requires the perfect audience. The night was still young, and I had plans for both of them. I retook my seat, watching as they exchanged confident glances over their wine glasses. My phone buzzed quietly in my purse, right on schedule. In precisely 30 minutes, everything they built their little fantasy upon would start to crumble. Blake would learn the true meaning of an upgrade, and Chloe would learn that some roles aren't worth playing. Tell me, Chloe, I said, leaning forward slightly, how long have you been wearing my grandmother's bracelet? The color drained from both their faces, and I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. This was just the first domino. By midnight, their world would be unrecognizable. The maitre d' approached our table with practiced grace, carrying a sealed envelope. Right on time, madam, he said, presenting it to me with a slight bow. As requested. Blake's brow furrowed in confusion. He hadn't noticed that I'd been quietly running this show all along. How amusing that he still thought this evening was his idea. I picked up my wine glass one final time, savoring the moment. Shall we begin? I opened the envelope with deliberate slowness, aware of Blake's increasingly anxious stare. The memories of our shared past flashed through my mind as I pulled out the contents. photographs, documents, and a USB drive that made Chloe's perfectly glossed lips part in surprise. "What is this?" Blake demanded, his corporate confidence wavering for the first time that evening. "History," I replied simply, laying out the first photograph. It was from our wedding day 10 years ago. We looked radiant, young, and hopelessly in love. "Do you remember what you promised that day, Blake?" His jaw tightened. Of course he remembered. Blake never forgot anything. That was part of what made him such a successful CEO. That same meticulous memory had once made him a thoughtful husband, noting every anniversary, every preference, every small detail that made our marriage special. "That's ancient history," he said dismissively, but his eyes lingered on the photo. I laid out another photograph, this one from 2 years ago, a business dinner where I first noticed something was off. Blake's hand resting a fraction too long on his assistant's shoulder. Not Chloe, her predecessor. That's when the pattern had started. 6 months after this, I continued, placing another photo on the table. "You began staying late at the office every Tuesday and Thursday. You said it was for the Singapore merger." I turned to Chloe, whose confident smile had begun to fade. "Interesting timing, wasn't it? That's when you were hired as the new junior executive." Blake's face darkened. "If you're trying to create a scene—" "Oh no," I interrupted softly. "I'm not creating anything. I'm revealing. There's a difference." I pulled out another document, bank statements. "Like how you revealed our marriage was over tonight, I'm revealing how you've been transferring company funds through shell corporations for the past 18 months. The wineglass in his hand froze halfway to his lips. Chloe's eyes widened, darting between Blake and the documents. "You always said I didn't understand your work," I continued, each word carefully measured. "But you forgot something crucial, darling. Before I became your wife, I was one of the top forensic accountants in the country. Those late nights you spent with Chloe, I spent mine following your paper trail." The memories of those sleepless nights washed over me. Each discovery had been another crack in the foundation of our marriage. But instead of breaking me, they had forged something stronger. Every betrayal had become a weapon in my arsenal. "Those gifts you've been lavishing on Chloe, the bracelet you stole from my grandmother's collection to give her, the penthouse apartment, the offshore account in her name, they're all traceable to embezzled company funds." Chloe's face had lost all color now. "Blake, you said those funds were legitimate. You said—" "Quiet," he snapped, but the damage was done. The first crack in their united front had appeared. I withdrew another photo from the envelope. This one was from 6 months ago, our last happy moment together, or so I'd thought. We were at the company's charity gala, smiling for the cameras. "You remember this night, don't you? It was the same night you approved the transfer of $50 million to our account in the Caymans." Blake's hand was shaking now, though he tried to hide it by setting down his wineglass. "Whatever you think you found." "Oh, I found everything," I said, finally allowing a hint of steel to enter my voice. "Every transaction, every fake account, every falsified document. Did you really think I spent the last year just waiting at home playing the dutiful wife?" The memories of our early years together surfaced unbidden. Lazy Sunday mornings, surprise vacations, small thoughtful gestures that had made our love seem unshakable. But beneath those golden memories lay the truth I'd uncovered. A man so consumed by greed and power that he'd sacrificed everything we'd built together. "Your father always warned you about me," I mused, watching as various emotions played across Blake's face. "He said someone with my background in financial crimes investigation would never make a suitable corporate wife." He was right, wasn't he? Just not in the way he imagined. Chloe started to stand, but I raised a hand to stop her. "I wouldn't leave just yet. The FBI agents in the restaurant lobby might have some questions for you about those offshore accounts in your name." The blood drained from Blake's face as realization dawned. All those months he thought he'd been cleverly hiding his affairs, both romantic and financial. He'd actually been weaving the rope for his own undoing. "You see," I continued, sliding the USB drive across the table, This contains everything the federal investigators need to unravel your entire scheme. And thanks to your dramatic choice of venue tonight, we have plenty of witnesses to establish that you voluntarily received this evidence. The past year of pain, betrayal, and careful planning crystallized in this moment. Every late night spent tracking transactions, every tear shed over discovered lies, every moment of humiliation had led to this perfect convergence of justice and revenge. The silence at our table was deafening. I watched as Blake's perfectly crafted facade crumbled, revealing the man I'd truly married, not the charming CEO who'd swept me off my feet at that corporate law conference 12 years ago, but the calculating manipulator who'd seen me as nothing more than a convenient stepping stone. "You don't know what you're talking about," he attempted, but his voice lacked its usual authority. "My position as Sterling Corp was handed to you by your father," I finished. The same father who built the company from nothing, who warned you about marrying someone with my particular skill set. I turned to Chloe, whose designer dress suddenly seemed to hang heavy on her shoulders. "Did he tell you about his background, Chloe? About how he was the third choice for CEO, only securing the position after two other candidates mysteriously withdrew?" Chloe's perfectly manicured fingers clutched her purse. She'd come from the marketing department, a rapid rise through the ranks that had raised eyebrows, but not as many as it should have. Her resume listed degrees from prestigious universities, references from influential executives, and a track record of successful campaigns, all carefully fabricated, as my investigation had revealed. "Your real name isn't even Chloe, is it?" I said softly, watching her composure crack. "Anastasia Petrova, graduated from a small community college in rural Indiana, changed your identity 3 times in the past 5 years. You've played this role before, haven't you? The ambitious young executive helping married CEOs embezzle funds before disappearing with your cut." Blake's head snapped toward her, genuine shock registering on his face. For all his cunning, he'd been played just as thoroughly as he tried to play me. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so tragic. "I was a federal prosecutor before I switched to corporate law," I continued, addressing them both, "specialized in white-collar crime. That's how Blake and I met. I was investigating his father's company for potential securities fraud." I smiled at the memory. Blake was so charming, so seemingly transparent. He helped me prove the allegations were false. I thought he was different from the corrupt executives I usually dealt with. The restaurant's ambient noise seemed to fade as I leaned forward. "But you weren't different, were you, Blake? You were just better at hiding it. When we married, you made sure I took a position at a private firm, away from any oversight of Sterling Corp's activities. You encouraged me to focus on merger acquisitions, rather than forensic accounting. Every career move you suggested led me further from discovering what you really were." Chloe, or Anastasia, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her eyes darted toward the restaurant's entrance, where 2 men in dark suits had just appeared. "Your father was right about one thing," I said, watching Blake's face. "My background made me uniquely qualified to understand corporate fraud, but he was wrong about me being unsuitable. I was exactly what this situation needed." I reached into my purse and withdrew one final document. "This is a copy of my resignation letter from Morrison Sterling, submitted this morning, effective immediately. I'll be returning to the FBI's white-collar crime division." I stood, smoothing my dress. They were particularly interested in my intimate knowledge of Sterling Corp's operations. The look of betrayal on Blake's face was almost comic. He'd orchestrated this dinner to humiliate me, to flaunt his young mistress and declare me obsolete. Instead, he'd walked straight into a trap, years in the making. "Agent Thompson will want to speak with you both," I said, nodding toward the approaching FBI agents. "I suggest you cooperate. Your father's influence won't help you this time, Blake. The board received copies of all the evidence an hour ago." As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the restaurant window. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the trusting bride of 10 years ago, or even to the successful corporate lawyer I'd become. This woman was something else entirely, a fusion of all my past roles, hardened by betrayal and sharpened by purpose. As I walked away from the table, I could hear the FBI agents beginning their rehearsed lines. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Petrova, we need you to come with us. But I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Everything that would unfold now had been meticulously planned over the past 6 months. The maitre d' handed me my coat with a knowing smile. He'd been well compensated for his role tonight, ensuring our table was perfectly positioned within view of the restaurant security cameras. Every word, every gesture, every document I'd presented had been carefully recorded. Additional evidence for the prosecution. In my car, I pulled out my secure phone and sent a single text. Checkmate. Within minutes, digital copies of all Sterling Corp's fraudulent transactions would be released to every major financial news outlet. The morning headlines were already written, but this wasn't a plan born of sudden inspiration. No, it had taken shape during those long, sleepless nights after I'd first discovered Blake's deception. I remember the exact moment finding a receipt for a diamond bracelet I'd never received, dated our last anniversary. That single slip had unraveled everything. I'd given myself 1 week to grieve, 7 days of tears and rage hidden behind closed doors. On the 8th day, I'd begun to plan. The first step had been reaching out to Marcus, my old colleague from the FBI. I need surveillance, I told him over coffee in a quiet cafe just outside Atlanta. Everything you can get on Blake Sterling and Sterling Corp's financial movements. Marcus had been hesitant initially. This isn't just about infidelity, is it? He'd asked, studying my face. It never is with men like Blake, I replied. Give me 2 months. I'll prove there's something bigger. Those 2 months had been a masterclass in deception. While Blake thought I was throwing myself into work to cope with our crumbling marriage, I was actually building a case. Every late night at the office had been spent tracing money trails, documenting suspicious patterns, and connecting dots that painted a damning picture. I'd hired private investigators to track both Blake and Chloe, planted listening devices in their favorite meeting spots, gained access to their private communications through entirely legal channels. Amazing what a worried wife can accomplish with a good lawyer and evidence of suspected financial fraud. The real breakthrough had come when I discovered Chloe's true identity. Anastasia Petrova wasn't just a con artist. She was a known associate of several financial crime rings. That discovery had led to a secret meeting in a parking garage worthy of a spy novel. I can offer you immunity, I told her 3 months ago. Full witness protection, new identity. Clean slate. All you have to do is help me prove what Blake is doing. Anastasia had been smarter than Blake gave her credit for. She'd seen the writing on the wall and agreed to play her part, continuing her role as the infatuated mistress while documenting every illegal transaction Blake asked her to handle. Tonight's dinner hadn't been Blake's idea at all. I'd orchestrated everything, using Anastasia to suggest the restaurant, the timing, even the cruel way he'd chosen to end our marriage. Blake's ego had made him believe it was all his own plan. Each step had been calculated, each reaction anticipated. I'd known Blake would choose to humiliate me publicly. His narcissism wouldn't allow for anything less dramatic. I'd known Anastasia would wear my grandmother's bracelet. I'd planted it in Blake's desk myself, knowing he'd give it to her as a trophy. As I drove home now, I thought about the evidence folders being delivered to board members' homes, the international wire transfers being flagged and frozen, the arrest warrants being executed at multiple locations. In a few hours, the empire Blake had stolen from his father would crumble. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from Marcus. All targets in custody. Evidence secured. Everything proceeding exactly as planned. I pulled into my driveway, the same one Blake and I had shared for a decade, and smiled at the irony. While he'd been planning tonight's grand gesture of humiliation, I'd been setting up the final pieces of my elaborate trap right under his nose, in our own home. Another text from Marcus lit up my phone. Package 2 delivered. Board members responding. Everything was unfolding with clockwork precision. The evidence I'd gathered hadn't just been sent to the FBI. I'd made sure every board member of Sterling Corp received personalized packages containing proof of how Blake's actions had specifically damaged their interests. Old Mr. Richardson would be particularly interested in how Blake had manipulated his family's shares. Mrs. Jong would be furious about the falsified Asian market reports. Each package was tailored to hit where it would hurt most, ensuring the board would turn on Blake completely. I entered our house, soon to be just mine, and walked straight to Blake's study. The wall safe behind his prized Monet, a fake, as the investigators had discovered, held more than just documents. I spun the dial with practiced ease. He never knew I'd learned the combination months ago by simply watching him open it one night while he thought I was asleep. Inside lay the final pieces of evidence. Original documents proving his father had never actually signed over full control of the company. Blake had forged the transfers, taking advantage of his father's declining health. I'd found them 3 weeks ago, but left them in place, knowing tonight would be the perfect time for their discovery. The FBI would be here within the hour with a search warrant. They'd find exactly what they were looking for, exactly where I'd ensured it would be. The safe, Blake's laptop with its hidden partition, the backup drive disguised as a coffee coaster. All would tell the same damning story. I moved to our bedroom, the room we'd shared until Blake started spending more nights at his executive apartment, and opened my jewelry box. The empty spot where my grandmother's bracelet had been seemed to mock Blake's arrogance. He'd never suspected that I'd planted it in his desk, knowing he would give it to Anastasia as a twisted trophy. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Anastasia's burner phone. Secondary files sent to prosecutors. En route to safe house. I'm going dark now. Thank you for the second chance. I deleted the message immediately. Anastasia had been the perfect accomplice, playing her role as the homewrecker while actually helping to gather the evidence that would bring Blake down. Her own criminal past had made her the ideal candidate for turning state's evidence. The police were now in Blake's home office, photographing everything. I watched as they discovered the fake Monet, another piece of evidence that would lead to additional charges of art fraud. Blake's perfect world was unraveling thread by thread, and he was powerless to stop it. Mrs. Sterling, the detective called out, "We found something interesting in your husband's safe. Did you know about these documents?" I walked over, feigning confusion. I never knew the combination. Blake was very private about his business matters. The detective held up the forged documents showing Blake's theft of company control from his father. My anonymous tip about those would hit the DA's desk tomorrow morning, adding another layer to the prosecution's case. "No," I whispered, letting my eyes fill with tears. I had no idea. All this time. As the officers continued their search, I retreated to the kitchen, ostensibly to make coffee for everyone. In reality, I needed a moment to appreciate how perfectly everything had aligned. The execution of my plan had been flawless, from the public humiliation Blake had orchestrated unwittingly against himself, to the precise timing of law enforcement's involvement. Dawn broke over the city as the last police car pulled away from our driveway. The morning news was already running the story on every channel. Sterling Corp's CEO arrested in massive fraud scheme. The financial networks were having a field day, their ticker tapes blood red with the company's plummeting stock prices. I sat in my kitchen, watching the chaos unfold on multiple screens. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since sunrise. Reporters, board members, old colleagues, all wanting to know how I was handling the shocking revelation of my husband's crimes. If only they knew. The first call I took was from Blake's father. Despite his declining health, his voice was sharp with anger and disappointment. "I warned him about you," the old man said without preamble. "Told him never to trust a woman with your background. But I never imagined he'd betray me like this." I'm so sorry, Richard," I replied, letting genuine sympathy color my voice. Blake's father had always been kind to me, even while warning his son against our marriage. "If there's anything I can do—" "You've done enough," he said quietly. "The board is meeting in an hour. We'll need an interim CEO to handle this crisis." I smiled into my coffee cup. Right on schedule. The aftermath was spreading like ripples in a pond. Blake's closest allies at Sterling Corp were being suspended pending investigation. The company's stock had dropped 40% in pre-market trading. International partners were distancing themselves, canceling deals that Blake had personally orchestrated. My laptop pinged with an email from Anastasia's lawyer. Her official statement had been filed with the DA's office. She detailed every transaction, every illegal deal, every instance of fraud she'd witnessed. Her testimony would be devastating to Blake's defense. The doorbell rang, Marcus arriving with official papers. "The DA wants to take your statement," he said, settling into my kitchen with his own coffee. "They're building a rock-solid case. Blake hasn't said a word since his arrest, but with the evidence we have, he doesn't need to." I nodded, reviewing the preliminary charges: fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, tax evasion, corporate espionage, each charge backed by meticulous documentation, each piece of evidence properly obtained and cataloged. "His lawyers?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Dropped him this morning. Apparently, they found out about the forged documents transferring company control from his father. They don't want any part of this." The morning papers arrived and I spread them across my kitchen island. Each headline was more damning than the last. Financial journalists were already calling it the scandal of the decade. Expert commentators were predicting prison sentences measured in decades, not years. My phone buzzed again, a text from Blake's sister, Charlotte. "I always knew he'd self-destruct eventually. Are you okay?" I left it unanswered. Charlotte had been another unwitting player in this game, her genuine concern for my well-being helping to mask my investigation over the past months. The aftermath wasn't just professional. Blake's social circle was disintegrating. Country club memberships revoked, charity board positions resigned. The carefully cultivated image he'd built over years was crumbling in a matter of hours. "The press will want a statement," Marcus reminded me gently. "They'll get one," I assured him. The devoted wife, shocked and devastated by her husband's betrayal, standing ready to cooperate fully with authorities. My performance at the Gilded Lily had been just the beginning. Now came the harder part, maintaining the facade of the wronged wife, playing my role in the public aftermath of Blake's downfall. A final text came through from an unknown number, Anastasia. "One last time, forever grateful. Good luck." Then her number went dark as she disappeared into her new life under witness protection. I looked around my kitchen at the empire of evidence I'd built to destroy the man who'd thought he could discard me. The aftermath was still unfolding, but the hardest part was done. Blake would never see it coming until it was too late. 1 month later, I sat in the gallery of the federal courthouse, watching as Blake was led in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, a far cry from his bespoke suits. He looked older, defeated, his carefully maintained appearance now showing signs of strain. He didn't look at me, but I made sure he could feel my presence. The hearing was brief but decisive. Blake had finally agreed to a plea deal, facing 20 years in federal prison and forfeiture of all assets gained through illegal means. His lawyers had advised him it was the best offer he'd get, given the mountain of evidence against him. "Your Honor," the prosecutor announced, "we have reached an agreement with the defendant." In exchange for his full cooperation in ongoing investigations, Mr. Sterling will plead guilty to all charges. I watched Blake's shoulders slump as the judge reviewed the terms. His father sat 2 rows behind him, looking more devastated than angry now. The mighty Sterling family name, built over generations, had been destroyed in a matter of weeks. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, hungry for a statement from the devoted wife who'd been blindsided by her husband's crimes. I played my part perfectly. "I'm still processing everything," I told them, letting my voice catch slightly. "The Blake I thought I knew. I just hope the truth brings some closure to everyone affected by his actions." Later that evening, I sat in what was now officially my house. The plea deal had included Blake forfeiting all claims to our joint assets, and opened a special bottle of wine I'd been saving. Not the overpriced Bordeaux Blake had preferred, but a simple Californian red I'd discovered on our first date, before he tried to remake me into his perfect corporate wife. My phone lit up with a message from Richard Sterling. "The board has reviewed your proposal. We'd like to meet tomorrow to discuss your role in rebuilding the company." Everything had come full circle. Blake had once pushed me away from corporate oversight. Now I would help lead the effort to resurrect Sterling Corp from the ashes of his crimes. His father, who had once warned him about my background in financial crime investigation, now saw it as the company's salvation. Anastasia was thriving in her new life, her immunity deal securing her freedom and a fresh start. The last update from her handler indicated she'd enrolled in college, pursuing a legitimate career far from her past cons. Sometimes the best revenge included allowing others a chance at redemption. I walked through the house, finally free to make the changes I'd always wanted. Blake's pretentious art collection, mostly forgeries as the investigators had discovered, would be replaced with pieces I actually loved. His study, that fortress of secrets and lies, would become my home office. The media had already dubbed it the Sterling Scandal, but they'd missed the real story. They focused on the financial crimes, the corporate espionage, the dramatic arrest. None of them suspected that the entire thing had been orchestrated by the quiet wife they depicted as another victim of Blake's deceptions. I opened my laptop one last time that evening, reviewing the final piece of my resolution. My official statement accepting the position of Chief Compliance Officer at Sterling Corp was ready to be released tomorrow. The board had been eager to demonstrate their commitment to transparency and reform. Who better to prevent future fraud than the woman who had exposed the last one? Blake's last words to me had been at the Gilded Lily. Meet the upgrade. He never realized that I was the one who'd be upgraded. From trophy wife to corporate savior, from victim to victor. The resolution wasn't just about justice or revenge. It was about transformation. Blake had tried to diminish me, to make me smaller. Instead, he'd given me the perfect opportunity to reveal my true self. As I got ready for bed that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd endured that humiliating anniversary dinner. She was stronger, sharper, more complete. Blake had wanted to write my ending, but instead, he'd only set up my beginning. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. The best revenge is served at precisely the right temperature, with perfect timing and garnished with absolute victory. Whoa, right? What an absolute roller coaster. This story proves that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you really need to watch out for. What did you think of the wife's brilliant plan? Did Blake get what he deserved? Let me know your biggest takeaways in the comments below. And hey, if you love this, don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories, hit that like button, and share this video with your friends. Your engagement helps this channel grow, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay amazing.